During the late 8th century BC, at the beginning of the Archaic period, the long-standing oral tradition of the Greek epic poetry gradually transitioned into a written form. This happened mainly due to the establishment of the Greek alphabet during that period. The most famous poet of that time was, of course, Homer, the author of the Iliad and the Odyssey. But today, we will talk about Hesiod, who was arguably as famous as Homer during that time, but is comparatively less known today. Hesiod lived during the late 8th and early 7th century BC. His life is partially shrouded in mystery. While he did provide some basic details about himself in his works, the majority of the information we have about him surfaced several hundred years after his death. His father was a merchant sailor from the city of Kymi, located in the region of Aeolia in the Anatolian west coast. Due to debt and poverty, he sought a new life as a farmer in the town of Askra, located in the land of Boeotia. It was there that his two sons, Hesiod and Perses, were born. Hesiod took up after his father and became a farmer, while he also tended to a flock of sheep on the slopes of the nearby mountain Helicon. Later on, he was introduced to poetry and began writing poems of his own. At some point in his life, he traveled to the island of Euboea and visited the city of Halkis, where he competed in a contest of epic poetry and won. This is all we know for certain about his life. Fortunately though, most of his poems survive today in full form. The Theogony is an epic poem that delves into the origins of the cosmos, depicting the emergence of the first gods and exploring their relationships and monumental conflicts. The poem begins with Hesiod sharing his encounter with the Muses, the Greek deities of science, literature, and arts. He says that they appeared before him at Mount Helicon, revealing the tales of the gods. As a token of their favor, they gave him a lyre and bestowed upon him the gift of poetry. After this introduction, the main tale begins. First, there was chaos. Then sprung Gaia, Tartarus, and Eros, the personifications of earth, the abyss, and desire. Chaos gave birth by himself to Nyx and Erebos, night and darkness, who then had numerous children of their own. Gaia also gave birth by herself to Uranos, Pontus, and Aurea, the personifications of the sky, the sea, and the mountains. Gaia then had children with both Uranos and Pontus. From the union of Gaia and Uranos sprung the 12 Titans, the Cyclopes, and the 3 Hecatoncheires, immensely powerful beings with 50 heads and 100 hands. Uranos, fearing the Hecatoncheires, banished them to the underworld, but Gaia, who pitied her children, conspired with the Titans in order to overthrow him. And so Kronos, the youngest Titan, attacked his father, castrating him and ultimately taking his place as the ruler of the heavens. Kronos then took his sister Rhea as his wife, and Rhea gave birth to 6 children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Poseidon, Hades, and Zeus. In fear of a prophecy foretelling his own downfall by the hands of his own child, Kronos would devour each of his newborn children as a precaution. But when Rhea gave birth to Zeus, he was spirited away and was secretly raised in a cave far away from Kronos. When he came of age, Zeus challenged Kronos and defeated him, freeing his brothers and sisters from their father's belly. Then followed what is known as the Titanomachy, a decade-long conflict where Zeus, joined by the other Olympians, the Cyclopes, and a select group of Titans, fought against the majority of the Titans and defeated them, banishing them to the depths of the underworld. Following his victory, Zeus established a new order and was made the supreme ruler of the heavens. However, he still had one great challenge to face, as from across the sea appeared Typhon, the son of Gaia and Tartarus, a colossal monster whose purpose was to overthrow Zeus and establish himself as the ruler of the gods. Typhon was part human and part beast. Sprouting from his shoulders were 100 snake heads, their tongues black and fire blazing from their eyes. These heads emitted thunderous roars that shook both the earth and the heavens. After an epic fight between the two, Zeus managed to defeat Typhon and ensured cosmic stability once again. After his victory, Zeus consecutively married 7 wives, fathering many children, both gods and demigods, and thus strengthening the rule of the Olympians. And here ends the Theogony. Although this is the main storyline of the poem, Hesiod also includes 3 side stories in between. The first is a long hymn to the goddess Hecate, who, as Hesiod says, was given great power and responsibility after Zeus established himself as a ruler. The second one is an extensive description of Tartarus and the underworld, the home of Hades. The third and final story is that of Prometheus, the titan who stole the gift of fire from the Olympians and gave it to the humans. At its core, the Theogony is a poem that explores the clashes between deities from 3 different eras, highlighting the recurring cycle wherein the establishment of a new ruler brings about the transformation of disorder into order. Most of the primordial gods are meant to be seen as personifications of nature and concepts like desire and nemesis. In Hesiod's era, he regarded Gaia, Uranus, Pontus, and other nature deities as the ones who make up the world, while the succeeding gods were seen as the ones responsible for governing and establishing cosmic order. The poem Works and Days is a rather unique work of literature, as it includes mythological tales as well as advice about farming and instruction on moral behavior. The poem begins with an invocation to the Muses. Hesiod then tells the myth of Pandora, the woman created by the gods and endowed with gifts from each of them. The gods gave Pandora a mysterious jar without telling her what was inside and married her off to Epimetheus, Prometheus' brother. Driven by curiosity, Pandora eventually opened the jar, unleashing all the plagues and toils of humanity unto the world, leaving only hope trapped inside. Right as hope was on the verge of escaping, Pandora managed to seal the jar, and from that day onward, humans have been unable to control the evils that plague the world, but they also have the power to hold hope in their hearts. Hesiod then tells the myth of the 5 ages of man, which places the history of mankind into 5 successive eras. The first was the Golden Age, in which the people led lives of peace, prosperity, and abundance. Then came the Silver Age, where people lived up to 100 years old, but spent most of their lives as little children, reckless and ignorant. Then came the Bronze Age, during which the people were strong and powerful, but were in a constant and brutal war amongst themselves. Following that was the Heroic Age, where people retained the strength of the previous age while demonstrating greater qualities of honor and justice. There was both war and peace during that time. This was also the age where the famous Greek heroes like Heracles and Achilles lived. The final age, which is contemporary to Hesiod, is the Iron Age of man. During that time, the people would suffer from continuous hard labor and they would experience moral decay. These are the 5 ages as told by Hesiod. Afterward, the poem delves into a fable centered around justice, further explaining the significance of its presence and prevalence in both the human and divine worlds. Hesiod proceeds to highlight the significance of work and hard labor as they make a man more virtuous and honest. Then he begins giving advice on various topics. The first advice concerns farming. He informs his readers of the optimal periods for tasks like plowing the field, cutting wood for farming tools, balancing rest and hard work, and provides instructions for the harvest season. Next, Hesiod gives advice for various topics like marriage, friendship, propriety, and religious practices. Finally, he informs the readers about which days of the month are auspicious and which ones are inauspicious, according to various ancient Greek superstitions. Throughout the poem, Hesiod also talks a little bit about himself and his brother Persis. He tells us that his brother bribed the local lords, who also held judicial roles, in order to claim more than his share of their father's inheritance. He describes Persis as both immoral and lazy, scolding him frequently throughout the poem. The Works and Days is mostly a didactic poem, which means that it is meant to instruct and give moral, behavioral, and practical advice. But it also includes myths and legends in order to retain the spirit of epic poetry. The third poem that is attributed to Hesiod is the Shield of Heracles. It is divided into 2 parts. In the first part, Hesiod intricately describes the shield of the famous Greek hero Heracles, which was made by the god Hephaestus. The shield was an exquisite work of art that contained various depictions of gods, beasts, demigods, and humans. In the second part, Hesiod recounts a duel between Heracles and Cycnus, an infamous son of Ares, the god of war. While engaged in the duel, Heracles received aid from the goddess Athena, while Cycnus had the support of the god Ares. Ultimately, Heracles emerged victorious, slaying Cycnus and even inflicting injury upon the god of war himself. The fourth and final poem that is attributed to Hesiod is known as the Catalogue of Women. Unfortunately, only a small number of fragments survive today. While this poem may have been a part of the Theogony, its nature deviates from that of an epic poem and instead takes the form of a list enumerating either heroic women or mortal women who bore children with gods. While Hesiod and Homer exhibit some similarities, they diverge significantly in terms of both content and the style of storytelling. What is interesting is that all four of Hesiod's works are quite different from each other. Such a great variety allows for different meanings and interpretations regarding the true essence of epic poetry. As for the myths in his poems, it should be noted that Hesiod was not the one who invented these stories. Rather, he collected and unified a vast body of different and local pre-existing Greek myths into one coherent form. Even after Hesiod's Theogony, there was never such a thing as an established official version of those myths. Ancient Greek myths continue to have many different variations depending on the local beliefs of each tribe and city-state. The same is true for the Greek gods. With the exception of Zeus and a few others, most of the Olympian deities were viewed and worshipped quite differently from city to city. Nevertheless, Hesiod's work was instrumental as one of the first and most important works of Greek mythology. He was also the one that provided and connected the extremely extensive family tree of the primordial gods, the Titans and the Olympians. Therefore, his impact on the ancient Greeks, and especially later poets and writers, should not be underestimated. To this day, Hesiod's work remains as one of the most important sources of ancient Greek mythology.